It is now my privilege to introduce United States Senator Jerry Moran of Kansas. Born and bred in the Sunflower State, he's a graduate of the University of Kansas in both economics and law. Moran has served the great state of Kansas for many years. He spent 8 years as a member of the Kansas Senate before being elected to Congress in 1996, after which he was reelected 5 times with minimal opposition. Jerry has been a United States Senator for Kansas since 2010. Moran holds no one in higher regard than our nation's veterans. During his time in Congress, he has made improving the quality of life for our nearly 20 million veterans a top priority. He was chairman of the VA Appropriations Subcommittee and remains a current and active member of the U.S. Senate VA Committee, where he led the way on toxic exposure issues like research for children and correcting the dates of Agent Orange presumptives for Korean DMZ vets. He was also instrumental in ensuring Congress improved VA health care to better serve veterans. Please welcome Senator Jerry Moran.
Honored to be with you. Thank you. Thank you and good morning. I start my day, incidentally, this is the second largest audience I've ever appeared in front of. The other was down the road just a few miles to the west in Kansas at the Kansas Speedway when I spoke at a NASCAR race and 80,000 people ignored me. I start my day with you and I will return to Washington, D.C., where at 5:30 this evening, the United States Senate will vote to confirm a new Secretary of the Department of Veterans Affairs. It's especially pleasing to me to be here with the Kansans in the audience, but I'm truly honored to speak in Kansas City and to address the veterans of foreign wars. As the introduction indicated, there is no group of people in America that I hold in higher regard than our veterans and those who serve other veterans. I grew up with Vietnam in the peripheral of my life. My father was a World War II Army veteran, and his service and the service of many in my community during the Vietnam War is something that I have long respected. That respect for those who are serving led me to be a member of the Defense Appropriations Committee, led me to chair the Military Construction and Veterans Affairs Appropriations Committee, and led me when I was first elected to the House of Representatives and continuing in the Senate to ask that I serve on the Veterans Affairs Committee. When I was a congressman, I represented a congressional district larger than the state of Illinois, but with no VA hospital. In my first few years in Congress, I considered myself to be a good congressman. I was a legislator. I cast meaningful votes, I returned home each weekend, and I listened to my constituents. And my primary focus was the 1st District of Kansas. A few years later, I was called to go beyond being simply a good congressman. There was a moment when I felt I needed to do more with the opportunity that I'd been given. That moment was a few days after the 9/11 terrorist attacks. I was part of a congressional trip to New York City to Ground Zero, and I was walking through the rubble and found a memorial that had been placed there near Ground Zero where loved ones could pay their respects. I passed framed photographs of those who'd fallen. I saw stuffed animals, teddy bears, flowers, things laid there to pay respect to those who were now in their final resting place. But a note, a piece of paper torn out of a spiral notebook, a jagged edge, was laying there, and I picked it up. The note read, "Dear Daddy, how much I miss you. How I hope heaven is a wonderful place, and I hope I live a life good enough to join you there someday. Amanda, age 12." It was at that point in time, reading that note, that I realized that my commitment to the people who elected me, my call to service was something much larger and something much more complicated. Public service now included the goal of making sure there were no more 12-year-olds who lost their fathers, no more Americans who were tragically harmed by terrorists. I realized that I must be more worldly and think more broadly when legislating, and that my obligations reached beyond my home district. I realized that I needed to pay closer attention to America's position as leader of the free world, and I resolved I would return to Congress and expand my focus to better serve the needs of our nation. Every member of this audience received and answered a call to service much more great than mine, a call to defend our way of life. And I'm so grateful that you, each of you, answered that call. We live in a very complex world, one where the United States must lead from a position of strength. Our men and women are still fighting in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria, and are working to stabilize other nations like Iraq. We face uncertain challenges in Iran and on the Korean Peninsula. Our nation faces threats from Russia and China in the warfare we cannot see that rages in the shadows of cyberspace. There are operations taking place across the globe. We have troops in harm's way in Africa and other places where the situation can change quickly, and our military leaders rely on our troops to fight and to win. We're fortunate. This country is so fortunate to be able to rely on you during world wars, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Gulf War, Operation Enduring and Iraqi Freedom, and other operations and conflicts where the situation was dire and the need was great. But the needs of our nation's veterans are also great. Our nation's needs are great, but the needs of our veterans are great, and the VFW is making a world of difference as veterans serving other veterans. VFW members choose to continue serving by assisting others who served, promoting patriotism, and having the veterans' voice heard and felt in Washington, D.C. I see it almost every day, the consequences of the strength of the VFW and its members. Since 1899, the VFW has created a unified voice in the care for veterans and demonstrated the qualities of servant leadership with the core mission of putting our nation and your brothers and sisters ahead of yourselves. But this should not be a mission the VFW alone has to undertake. We need the support from our academic institutions, providing education and training for our veterans, current service members, and their families through the GI Bill. Industry and employers must make hiring veterans a priority and ease the burden faced by Guard and reservists who need to take time to drill or who, when they go on deployment, return to their day jobs. Veterans deserve the best of the Department of Veterans Affairs, the best that it has to offer. I judge whether the VA is doing its job through casework. The number of veterans contacting my office and asking for assistance because they're struggling to get the care or benefits they need. This is something VFW understands well, because the VFW also provides casework services, helping veterans navigate the VA and working to get them benefits they've earned. Together, we must make certain no veteran falls through the cracks. We will know that we've been successful when we no longer lose 20 veterans a day to suicide. We cannot expect our younger generation of volunteers to serve if they don't feel and know that they will be supported during and after their service. The times that I saw as a teenager when service members were not supported and respected by their fellow Americans must never, never, never be repeated. Each of you Every one of you continues to serve and benefit our nation through your membership in the VFW, and what you do for each other and all who have served our nation inspires me and the rest of America. That inspiration that you provide is sorely needed today. Our people, the American people, are sick and tired of politics, of Republican this and Democrat that. When I get discouraged, I put on my running shoes and I walk up to the Lincoln Memorial. And on that walk, I will go by the World War II Memorial. I'll then go by the Vietnam Wall. And on my way back, I come by the Korean War Memorial. Those memorials and monuments remind me that no serviceman or woman served his or her country because they were Republicans or Democrats. They served their country because of a higher calling. They believed that service would protect their families at home, make their country more secure, and their world safer for freedom and liberty. Our U.S. senators and representatives, our Congress, and our President need only to look to you to see how we should conduct business, how we should behave, how we should work for others. You are our role models, not polls, not newspaper headlines, or focus groups. The VFW and our veterans have an opportunity to make America a better country because of that role model. No one that's honored at those monuments that I see on the National Mall paid the ultimate sacrifice for the unnecessary gridlock and petty politics of Washington today. On one of those walks up the mall, I stopped at the Kansas column of the World War II Memorial, and I thought of my dad back home in Plainville, Kansas. I stepped away from that memorial, and I used my cell phone and I called him at home. Fortunately for me, I got his voicemail, because what I said that day is hard for any son to say to his father. I said, "Dad, I'm at the World War II Memorial. It was built in your honor. And I want you to know that I thank you for your service. I respect you, and Dad, I love you." During my walk back to my office, my cell phone rang. It was my dad. He went up to me. He said, "Gerald, you left me a message. I couldn't understand it. Could you repeat it?" My dad, a VFW member, died a few years back at age 98. So I can't repeat it to him. So today, let me repeat it to you. I thank you for your service. I respect you, and I love you. God bless America and those who honor it like you do with your service. Thank you. Thank you very much.